I'm Marshall, and I know stuff. Stick around and I'll show you how to know some of the stuff that I know. So, you guys are beating me up about this whole railroad track anvil thing. And the short and skinny of it is, I know. Railroad tracks don't make the best anvils. But they're definitely cost effective. You've looked online, and the cheapest that I've found for like a 150-pound anvil is like $300, $400. Who wants to spend $500 on a 150-pound anvil? Not me. I mean, I would like to, but like I said, I'm a hobbyist. So what I'm going to have to do is make do with things like a railroad track. Certainly works better than, say, a rock or my I-beam. There's ways in which it is effective and ways in which it is not. The anvil works pretty well for making knives, which is basically all I do with my blacksmithing. I'll make a couple of other things here and there, but I enjoy making knives. And the railroad track gives you a thin, flat, long surface to be able to hammer your steel out on. So for making knives, it works great. However, I plan on branching out and doing some more stuff. So on this episode of Marshall Knows Stuff, we're going to be doing part 2 of how to make an anvil out of a railroad track. We will be making some modifications to a railroad track and making a better anvil out of a railroad track. Alright, like I always say, get a specific goal in mind and then work towards it. I know for a fact that I'm going to need a horn on my anvil because I need to start shaping stuff into smaller U's and stuff like that, where the edge, the straight 90-degree edge of the anvil, working stuff over that can only get you that 90-degree turn. If you want to make rings or anything like that, horseshoes maybe, so you use a horn for. I'm going to first cut out the horn. I know for a fact that I'm going to need a horn, so I'm going to be cutting out that horn, and I'm going to try to leave as much of that steel on there as possible because I don't want to get rid of too much of my weight, too much of my mass underneath my swing. In order to accomplish this, instead of doing a long, narrow horn, I think I'm going to spread it out a little bit more and make a wider horn, a more steep or less steep angle on my horn, so that I can save some more of that metal. So I'm not going to be cutting it all the way in like that. I'll have some of that mass on the side to retain some of the weight of the anvil. So that's what I'm going to do first. Okay, here's my current setup. I have my railroad track that I nailed onto a couple of tree stumps, and what I did is I actually took 2 different tree stumps that would make it the right height for me, and then I just nailed them together. I made some 2-sided nails and nailed those together, and then I typically put my I-beam strapped to that to give it a little bit more mass. This is all pretty easy stuff, and I'll go over reattaching all this stuff once we get through the end of this video. So if you want to see the way this all comes together, then watch till the end. I'll show you how to put the tree stump together, how to make 2-sided nails, and how to affix this guy onto there. So we're going to be doing all that at the very end. Okay, like I said, I want to make the horn as gradual as possible because I want the most amount of steel that I can retain on here as possible. I can curve it over and you'll still have the same functionality with it because there will be some point on it that you'll still be able to hammer it and curve stuff over, but it's just going to be a lot shorter and stubbier than it typically would be on any other anvil, just because that's the amount of steel that I have to work with. I'm looking at this and I've got about 7.5 inches of railroad track to play with on my old 1960. So I think what I'm going to do is take it in about 2.5 inches. 2.5 inches will be about right there. That's going to be my horn. That's still a little bit stubbier than I wanted it. But like I said, I've got to work with what I've got here. And I do want a horn on this anvil now, so I can start playing with other stuff. So 2.5 inches is what it'll be. I'm going to start marking it up now. I'm all marked up on my railroad track now, so the next probably hour or so is going to be nothing but grinding with an angle grinder and using the cutoff wheel So I'm just going to switch over to time lapse so you can watch that in fast motion instead of having to endure watching me do it at regular speed. I will stop if there's anything that I want to point out to you along the way, but honestly, it's just really going to be keeping straight lines, and I've already told you how to keep a straight line with angle grinder whenever you're using an angle grinder. So I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to go ahead and start grinding this thing up. Well, there we go. It's starting to look like a horn now, and that was just getting through that much steel was kind of a pain in the butt. It took about the amount of time that I thought it would, about an hour to make it all the way through that. I keep running into the cutoff wheel not being long enough. It wears down pretty quickly, and that is about how much I went through it before I just put the chisel in there and hammered it out. Because it's it'll be easier to smooth that over. But now I've got a couple more hunks of pretty good steel to work with. If the amount of sparks are any indication of how much carbon is in this steel, and it is, then I'm going to have some pretty good chunks of steel to mess around with. I can make something out of either of these hunks that I cut off of there. But now we're going to start shaping it. Now it's just a point. We're going to start making it look like an actual horn and taper it in the areas that we need to. And another thing that we need to do is give ourselves some working space underneath. The horn, it needs to be isolated from the rest of the body, so I'm going to cut this area out so you can hook things all the way around it. So that's what I'm going to do next. Is I'm going to take this little chunk of steel out of the base of it underneath the horn so that we have some space to work with underneath the horn. What I'm doing now to be able to get this curve in the base of the railroad track like I want is I'm doing a bunch of lateral lines along it. You can see the guide that I made myself there. That's the general shape that I want. But you can't really do curves with an angle grinder because it's a straight wheel and it wants to fall into a straight groove. And that's exactly what you want it to do. So in order to cut curves with it, you have to do a bunch of lateral lines, and then you start cutting those little notches that you made out of it. That's how you get a curve with an angle grinder. Another little tip. So I'm going to keep grinding away. We're almost there. We're almost done with the horn, and then we're going to start moving on to some other features of the anvil. Coming down pretty good. So I've got my horn pretty much cut out here. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to switch over to a 40 grit polishing wheel so I can round the horn over a little bit before I slope it down anymore. I need to get a much steeper slope to this horn underneath, but before I do that, I want to see what I have to work with by curving the horn over a little bit more. So I'm going to take off my cutoff wheel, probably like the 5th one that I've used so far. It's a lot of steel to cut through. I'm going to take off my cutoff wheel and go with the polishing wheel. Start to round this horn a little bit, start to shape it up a little. You might have noticed that I switched from the polishing wheel to the cutoff wheel in doing that because I just got impatient. It was taking way too long to do it. And it actually turned out okay. I got the curve on the horn like I wanted. It's not a real steep curve, but it's still noticeable. It's still curved enough to where you could easily bend something around that. I'm going to polish this, and then I'm going to leave it at that for the horn. If later on, while I'm making something, I notice that I need a steeper curve to it, then I can put another curve onto it. It's all it takes is a little bit of time with the angle grinder, but I think I'm going to leave it like that right now. It definitely is starting to look a little bit more like an anvil. The only other thing that I wanted to add to this anvil, because I know that I'm going to be able to get some use out of it, is a hardy hole. Hardy holes, however, are square. They are not round holes put into the anvil. The reason the hardy holes are square is because you put tools in them and you don't want them to shift as you're using them, like a nipping wedge or whatever the tool is. I think that I'm going to just drill out a circular hole in it because I'm planning on making my own tools for it anyway out of rebar. Like say if I had rebar and I wanted to make a nipping wedge, however wide or narrow I wanted my nipping wedge to be, then I could just make that nipping wedge for that size of hole that I drill in the back of it. So the last thing that I'm going to do on this is I'm just going to punch that hole in the back. I'm going to use about a 1/2-inch drill bit, I think. I'm going to stick with a 1/2-inch drill bit. And then whenever I want to make any tools for it, then I'll just use a little bit wider, like maybe 9/16 rebar, and then that way I can just taper the rebar and then get it down into there to where it stays. And I'm not going to need a square hole, a square hardy hole. All right, I'm going to put my hole at the back, and I'm just going to start out piloting with a 1/4-inch bit, and then I'm going to work up to the 1/2-inch goal that I have for this. I went to go edit the video last week so that I could upload it, and I realized that I'd promised that I was going to show you guys how to make the double-sided nails and how to get all of it back together. Some of you might be hanging on towards the end of the video to see all this happen. Not likely, but I'm back in the garage this weekend so I can show you how to do it. It's actually super simple. All I do is I take All I do is I take those same 4-inch nails that I made the mini sword out of, if you do recall the mini sword video. And with the angle grinder, real quick. Cut off the head. Then, with the head off, I just hit it with the belt sander real quick. To give it a little bit of a point. And I don't bother hardening it or anything like that because all I'm doing is driving it into wood. But I do drive this side first, and I hammer on that side because that side hasn't just been softened up. I just grabbed a little log from the backyard, the little firewood log, just to show you guys how it goes together. But it's pretty self-explanatory. Like I said, I go the side that I just formed down, because that side is treated, and even hitting it with that 2.5 pound sledge a couple times doesn't malform it that bad. Go about halfway in. Then I grab the top side of the log and start hitting it into it. And voila. You put two stumps together. If you don't have a huge tree stump to get together, you can use some smaller logs and put them together to give yourself a nice base for your anvil. To recap, for the size, weight, and general shape that the Railroad Track Anvil ended up at, one could easily vindicate spending $50 or $60 at Harbor Freight on a similar one, especially taking into consideration that the cutoff wheels, time, and other materials could easily add up to that. But I got to spend some time in the garage, smoking my pipe and drinking some beer, and making something with my own hands, getting some gratification out of creating something with my own hands. And at the end of the day, isn't that what it's really about? Remember, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, and let's keep knowing some stuff.